Hey, I'm Nate with Christ Church Montevideo, and last week we introduced the book of Ecclesiastes, the focus of our new series, Life, What's the Point? In that brief overview, we went over some of the keys to unlocking the book, so you definitely want to go back and watch it if you missed it. For example, we talked about the author. He referred to himself as the teacher or the professor. So whether the famous King Solomon is this teacher, as it's been historically believed, or it's someone else writing from his perspective, his unique life is clearly in view because he had the unique position and resources and power to try all of these paths to the full. In search of the point of life, meaning under the sun. In other words, this life here on earth, if this is all there is. And in the following weeks, we will see the results of each of these experiments. And we'll zoom out to see the Bible as a whole, to see how his findings connect to what we can now know, especially what we can know about Jesus. So after his opening chapter, where he introduces his main premise, that everything is like a vapor. Life is short. It's here one moment and gone the next, basically. Then he starts his first trial run with the pleasure path. It says, I thought to myself, come now, I will test you with pleasure to find out what is good, what's worthwhile for humans to do under the sun during the few days of their lives. So in his pursuit of happiness, he first starts with good times. He tried laughter, alcohol, general silliness, maybe even pranks, we don't know. The young person's type of fun. Then he moved on from the college party life to some more serious adult attempts at finding lasting joy via this pleasure path. It says he undertook great building projects. The joy that comes along with accomplishing something. It says he tried to make his community a better place. He took care of nature. He made parks and gardens and planted all kinds of trees and made sure they were well watered. This type of stuff makes a lot of people happy. And then he tried just being straight up rich. He had livestock and slaves and gold and silver, the treasure of a king, more than anyone before him in Israel. And he looked for the joy of love in the arms of a woman. And they tried that again and again and again, because apparently he had a whole harem of hundreds of wives and concubines. And finally, he had all of the worldwide fame that anyone could want. Kings and queens coming from distant lands just to meet this celebrity. And the conclusion to this experiment is this. He says, I denied myself nothing my eyes desired. I refused my heart no pleasure. But in all of this, my wisdom stayed with me. So when I surveyed all that my hands had done, everything was vapor, like chasing after the wind, temporary and pointless. Nothing was gained under the sun. Remember, Ecclesiastes has been called the most modern book of the Bible, and I think we're seeing why. The experience of this man 3,000 years ago, we can think of a lot of modern day Solomons who seem to have run these same tests with their life, but maybe without knowing it. So just one example of a modern day Solomon, in the United States, since we can't play what the rest of the world calls football very well, we invent our own sports. And so in American football, there's basically no debate. The best of the best is Tom Brady. His life is the pinnacle of the dreams of so many. He's won 6 Super Bowls, 6 championships. He has accomplishments, he has fame, he has riches, he has popularity with the ladies. And you may have seen this interview back in 2005 after he won his 3rd championship.
It's what you always wanted.
You're right. You're right. It has. And I didn't think it came with all the other baggage, though.
The most eligible bachelor in America.
Well, it's very flattering. But at the same time, I don't think I sleep any better at night. Being that. No way.
You mean like alone or not alone? What did you mean by that?
Yeah, that's right.
But with all that money, fame, and career accomplishments, we were surprised to hear this from him.
Why do I have 3 Super Bowl rings and still think there's something greater out there for me? I mean, maybe a lot of people would say, hey, man, this is what it is. I reached my goal, my dream, my life is... Me, I think, God, it's got to be more than this.
What's the answer?
I wish I knew. I wish I knew.
You know, later in that interview, he was asked, what's your favorite of all your championships? And he said, the next one. Never enough. See, in this life, we may be driven by the idea that if we just had a little bit more, if we just had the ability to get to a certain level of financial stability or accomplishment or recognition or a love life or family peace, then we would finally be satisfied and fulfilled. But the Solomons and the Tom Bradys of the world have already gone before us, and they've tried this path to the max, to its fullest. And their conclusion is, it's nice, but now what? There's got to be more than this. Ecclesiastes says, the eye never has enough of seeing, the ear, it's full of hearing. All a man's efforts are for his mouth, and yet his appetite is never satisfied. What's the answer? I wish I knew, he said. I wish I knew. Well, one response is to stop trying to find the point of life, the meaning, some purpose. Many have decided there isn't any. And so life is just short. Nothing really matters. So just go out and have fun while it lasts. This is what the author of Ecclesiastes seems to conclude is the best option for life under the sun, here on earth, if there's nothing else. He says this phrase 5 times. The best a person can do in life is eat, drink, and be merry. Enjoy. Have fun while it lasts. That's actually a pretty common Hebrew phrase that people said all the time. It comes up in the Old and New Testaments, and the full version is eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. It's basically the ancient Hebrew equivalent of YOLO. You only live once. But basically the idea is it's impossible to find satisfaction in this life. Life is short, so just live it up. Stop trying to find fulfillment. Now the Apostle Paul might say, if only for this life we have hope, then we are of all people most to be pitied. But he seemed to think that Jesus makes all the difference. Because Jesus, he talked to a lady once. Now, this wasn't a king like Solomon. She was a common villager, but a fulfillment seeker nonetheless. And she, no doubt, wanted to keep her pursuit of true love and true joy quiet. But when Jesus first met her, he somehow knew everything. He told her, listen, I know that you have had 5 husbands and you are living with man number 6. And when Jesus met her, she was coming to this well outside of the village to get water. And he said, you know what? Everyone who drinks this water will thirst again. But whoever drinks of the water that I will give him shall never thirst again. The woman said to him, Sir, give me this water so that I won't get thirsty and have to keep coming here to draw water. What an analogy that Jesus had for this woman's deeper need. Because thirst is the most basic, one of the most basic physical needs of all humans. And so to try to satisfy that need, this woman had to keep going back to this well for more. It quenches temporarily, but it never worked completely. She would always need more. This never-ending quest, like chasing after the wind. And it was the same thing with her deeper need. This pursuit of true love and true joy. In order to try to satisfy that, she felt like she needed to keep running to the arms of different men. It worked temporarily, but it always seemed to come up short. But this water that makes us never thirst again is the true joy, the true love, the true life that finally and completely satisfies our most basic need, the life that we long for. He said, "This water I give you will become in you a well of water springing up to eternal life." See, Jesus makes the difference because he makes it clear this is not all there is, and he has been up to something even greater for those that find their joy in him. See, the Ecclesiastes teacher found that under the sun, pleasure is pointless. There's no point in trying to satisfy your longing for joy in this life if this is all there is. But even in his limited understanding of what is beyond the sun, he still was very aware of God and the spiritual reality. And he wanted to make clear that God has been up to something greater. There has to be something more than this. So the central verse of Ecclesiastes, where we find our twofold conclusion, is this: God has made everything beautiful in its time, but he's also set eternity in the human heart. Yet they cannot fathom what God has been up to from beginning to end. So on the one hand, God has placed eternity in the hearts of men. This is not all there is. There is more. And one of the evidences is that we're not like wild animals with only the desire to survive for the here and now. Why do we humans wonder to ourselves what the point of life is, if there's a greater meaning or not? See, we have these deep, fundamental desires for intangible things like purpose and true joy and true love and true inner peace that no amount of friendship or romance or success or adventure or food can ever satisfy. Even the best examples of all of these always comes up short. Just ask Tom Brady or Solomon. We have these deep longings that nothing in this world can satisfy, and it seems like God did that on purpose. It's made thinkers like C.S. Lewis conclude that this indicates that we are designed for something more. We belong to a different world, one that's waiting beyond the sun. Because after Solomon's life, the rest of the Old Testament, and certainly the New Testament, reveal to us, help us to fathom a little bit of what God has been up to from beginning to end, especially that he will renovate this earth completely, ridding it of the curse of hopelessness and sadness. This search that's never ending, that living however we want brings. He'll bring heaven down here to unite it with earth. So there will no longer be this separation of under the sun and beyond the sun. However, our insistence on living for our own pleasure, regardless of whether it violates God's perfect standard or not, that makes it impossible for us to be welcomed in to this new life with him. The author of Ecclesiastes says, go ahead. Follow the impulses of your heart. If something looks good to you, go for it. But know also that not just anything goes. You will have to answer to God for every last bit of it. He says, eat, drink, be merry, but not the YOLO mentality of doing whatever. because this is not all there is. And without perfection, it's impossible to please God. So I'm pretty sure that rules us all out. That didn't sit well with God. So the perfect Jesus, who alone pleased God perfectly, pleased him to the max by sacrificing himself in our place. God did that so that faith in him would be the only possibility, the only way to drink this water that makes us never thirst again. That true joy, that life that we are longing for. And that day, we can truly say, let's eat, drink, and be happy because we will never die. But before we start hating on this life and just sit around waiting, the other half of that conclusion from Ecclesiastes 3:11 is that God has made everything beautiful in its time. God has packed this earth, this life, with incredible joys, music, beauty, art, things that mindless atoms would have a hard time coming up with or appreciating. The satisfaction of a job well done, the excitement of the next travel destination, the joy of a delicious meal, romantic love, love in a family, love with friends. Ecclesiastes says, enjoy all of that because it's a gift straight from the hand of God. In fact, even the ability to enjoy is a gift from God. So while it may seem like Ecclesiastes is saying this is all pointless, pleasure and joy is pointless, he's actually saying trying to find your ultimate satisfaction and identity and meaning in these gifts instead of looking toward the giver, that is meaningless. And he says God gives us these earthly joys. He gives it to everyone who has breath for this purpose, so that we would be led toward him, that it would lead us to him. And the Apostle Paul said almost the exact same thing in the book of Acts. We are bringing you good news, telling you to turn from these worthless or pointless vapor things to the living God. But he never left you without evidence of himself. He has shown kindness by giving you rain from heaven and crops in their season. He provides you with plenty of food and fills your hearts with joy. He himself gives everyone life and breath and everything else. God did this so that you would seek him and perhaps reach out for him and find him, though he's never far from any one of us. So the key is that these earthly joys were never meant to satisfy the longing, but to stir it up and entice it. They are breadcrumbs leading us to the giver. It's like the smell of a pie isn't supposed to satisfy your taste buds. And the little sample on a toothpick in a supermarket is not supposed to make you feel full. Its purpose is to entice you toward the real thing. So we can eat, drink, and find satisfaction in this life, not because we only live once, but precisely because there is more than this. So whether you eat or drink, or whatever you do it for the glory of God. And with that mindset, we can truly live this life to the full now, as we place our hope in Jesus and in that ultimate life to come.